Well, Jake, welcome to Testimonies of Triumph. You and I don't know one another, so we're going to spend just a little bit of time trying to figure each other out and then hear where God is in the middle of all of it. So I've had a chance to review the application you sent. Thank you very much for that. I understand you have a military background. You have some other services you're doing now. Do me a favor and just sort of set the table. Kind of where did you grow up? What life was like at that, and then leading up to where life changed for you. I'd like to know a little bit more of those details.
Perfect. No, I appreciate you asking. Again, my name is Jake Thomas. I did 8 years in the United States Marine Corps in the infantry from 2000 to 2008. My dad was a Navy man. We were a military family, so we bounced around a lot. Didn't really stay in one place very long, so relationships were very surface level. Um, Bouncing from school to school as a kid, always the new kid. Um, and we eventually settled in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, so Washington State.
Okay.
My dad exited the Navy, and
Okay.
we stayed there for many years. Um, Grew up in a religious family, very faith based family, but I figured out pretty quickly, right around that 12, 13-year-old mark, that I was living off borrowed light. My parents had very strong testimonies, they had very strong connections with God and their creator. And I was, oh, well, they're doing it, so I'm doing it. And then I quickly found myself face to face with, okay, well, I don't necessarily know if I believe what they believe, and I don't necessarily know
Okay.
God like they know God. And
Yeah.
so I took a path of, you tell me one thing, and I'm gonna go to the other edge of it, and to prove tonight I know better.
Okay.
Uh, but even in those rebellious windows of time,
Yeah.
I could never argue with the fact that I knew that there was a higher power. I knew that there was somebody mindful of me. And even in my knucklehead phases, I couldn't deny truth. As hard as I tried to get away from
Sure.
it. That led me into teenage pregnancy,
Okay.
being married at a very early age, being divorced at a very early age, um, broken contact with my son because of how
Oh.
custody was awarded, joining the Marine Corps, trying to figure out where I fit into this big picture, going to combat. And before I went to combat, I had come back to my faith and really started to lean into it. And then trauma from one of my Marines dying
Yeah.
and feeling abandoned and feeling like it was my fault. But where was God in this?
Sure.
Because if He knew, I wouldn't be feeling these ways and this wouldn't have had to happen.
Yeah.
And now I came home in 2003, 21 years later, feeling like, okay, I'm actually really starting to become like I know I'm home. And a lot of that is tied to realizing that who I perceive God to be, who I
Okay.
perceive Jesus Christ to be, they weren't actually who they are, in my opinion. I had viewed them as the angry, controlling God, the God who,
Oh.
you have to do good to have good. And if you do bad, you earn bad. And this very transactional understanding of a relationship.
Yeah.
And now I'm learning more and more day by day that that's not who God is at all.
Yeah.
And that's not who Jesus Christ is at all. And so when I saw your solicitation about, hey, tell me about your experience with God and where He fits in,
Yeah.
I'm learning that He's always been there.
Sure.
It's just where I choose to face and be in a relationship with Him
Yep.
or go and do my own thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You were sharing the first part of your story, and I can relate a lot to what it is you had to say. I grew up in a Lutheran household, and I knew for those of you who don't know what Lutheranism is, it's like Catholic light, right? I get a chance to know when to sit up, when to stand up, when to sit down, when to kneel, where the hymns are, and I went through the confirmation program and took my first communion, and I thought, well, okay, I guess I made it. All I had was this book smarts. I understood, right? I understood what it was, but I had this book smarts, and I didn't have a face to face confrontation with Jesus yet. And so I sort of went through that routine, but from that point on to the beginning of college, I was in and out of my faith because I hadn't had this sort of confrontation. You made a mention that just before going into the military, you had your faith. What changed in there? What part of that rebelliousness disappeared? How did it disappear? And what changed at that point before you went off to war?
So, good question. Joining the military brought me back to my faith because, I mean, you want all the stressors in the world in a very small package. Go to military boot camp, Marine Corps boot camp,
Yep.
where you quickly realize uh, individuals don't exist here.
Nope.
It's about the team.
Yep.
There's a reason for that. And in light of the chaos, Sundays were that opportunity to be like, okay, I found refuge again with God. And it was almost like by necessity
Yep.
because 7 days in of just go, 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 crush, crush, crush,
Yeah.
you need that break.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh, okay. I think it was an outlet and avoidance at first.
Sure.
And then, you leave boot camp setting, you feel like you're back into normalcy. And then I went away from my faith again. I went
Yep.
overseas to England and,
Yep.
you know, did all the things and then came back to my faith.
Yep.
And then I felt like I lost it in the deserts for a time.
Yep.
And I've been little by little here and there been able to look back and go, oh, God's always been there.
Yeah, well, and let's take that one just a little bit further too, because as you go in and out, there's a truth about God that you're starting to understand, and that is that He's always been there. But there's other stuff about His own His personality, how He's treating you, how He's wired. That there's something there. I'm just curious what your observation was about what that experience was like. And then was there ever an aha moment that just simply said, wow, well, maybe I heard a little bit of it where you thought it was previously transactional and then you said, well, wait, maybe it's not. What was the moment in there, or what was the brief period of time in there which that like hit you like a brick, or did it not hit you like a brick?
I'm a stubborn individual.
Well, I'm
I will
glad you
acknowledge.
served in the Marines as a
Yes.
stubborn individual. It's good.
I think even as a little kid, I've had this idea of like, I'm going to do it my way.
Okay.
And what I love about the in and out that I can look back and reflect on with aligning with God and then
Yep.
going away
Yep.
is He loves me enough. He loves each of us enough to let us take that path, even though He could probably see so much further
Yep.
that, oh, there's going to be some obstacles. There's going to be some things.
Yep.
And so the aha moment for me, I would have to say, I can't give you a pinpoint because I
That's
think
okay.
it's ongoing.
Well, and that's okay. That's okay. So some get it like a 2x4 over the forehead, and some don't. And I was just curious because it's fascinating for me to hear what it is you're talking about, and how common I think your experience is. Not necessarily the common part of going off to war and coming back, and there's a lot of nuance and very specific, very you things there. The relationship and in and out and this realization and your maturity and your faith over time, that's a very normal thing. I think we're all still a work in progress. I think that sooner or later, I guess when we see him face to face, we'll all have it together. But until then, we're still going to be tempted by a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to want to kind of try to do it our way. So, I mean, for me and other people who are listening, it's probably kind of encouraging to know that, it's going to be all right. It's not this transactional thing. God's after us for a reason. And his heart is amazing, what He's willing to forgive and what He's already forgiven by being on the cross. So it's unbelievable. So talk to me just a little bit about there's a saying, you've heard it. There's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole. And when you're in war, so let me share a little bit so you know kind of where I'm coming from. I've never been to war. I went to the United States Naval Academy, and I understand the first part of your story here in what life is like when you have to be part of the team. I didn't finish at the United States Naval Academy, and I didn't go to war. I have a whole lot of respect for everybody who did go to war. So I can't put myself directly in your shoes. So I'm going to ask you a few questions to sort of understand it a bit. But like kind of what I was saying is that there is no atheist in a foxhole is what the saying is. I want to try to understand from your perspective how true that is and what are the circumstances that get you to that point and what changes in your life based on that experience.
Mm, no, that's a great question. Um, so when we crossed into Iraq in 2003, um, a lot of moving parts, a lot of units going certain places, and we were waiting to leapfrog behind another unit, and they had taken heavy, heavy contact um, in An Nazaria, actually, pretty famous battle space, um, and they were in it. And we're getting, hey, be prepared to move. We're getting ready to go and either assist or reinforce. And in the vehicle that I was in an Amtrak, so that's a mechanized vehicle that transports troops. It's amphibious as well. We had Protestants, we had Wiccans, we had members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints, we had Church of Christ, we had everybody and their brother was a sample in this group.
Sure.
And
It's okay.
as I reflect,
It's okay. This is what it's all about.
nobody, yeah, nobody cared what church you went to, nobody
Yep.
cared what you believed. But in that moment, I watched 15 Marines offer their own prayer
Yep.
vocally
Yep.
for the guys who were in it in front of us and for what we may be tasked to do with to go assist.
Yeah.
And it's like, so in the midst of chaos, when you feel helpless,
Yep.
it's a lesson and a reminder that we're not helpless.
Yeah.
That acknowledging God, acknowledging that there's somebody we can petition
Yep.
for comfort, for peace, for direction is there
Yep.
consistently 24 hours a day.
Yep. I don't know whether or not you sort of spent too much time in the Book of Jonah, but that's like the story out of the Book of Jonah, right? I mean, the sea is ridiculous outside, and death is imminent or potentially imminent, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we've got to rely on something, and that something is obvious now. Let's go figure that out, and it's fascinating to hear the camaraderie that comes from that and to understand that at that moment you're all viewing each other as souls, not colored souls, not uh, religious background souls, just plain souls, and getting back to those kinds of basics and working within that tight knit community is what gets you home, and I'm glad it did. So now that you've had that experience and you've come out on the other side and you've spent 20 years trying to undo what the military training did as far as creating a warrior out of you, to get back into society, do what you have to do, and work through the challenges of that transition, hearing people grateful that you went, not grateful that you went, and all the other nonsense that's associated with it. What does life look like now, and how does this faith experience that you've had influence what's happening now?
Mm. What does life look like now? When I really began to lean into an understanding of who I understood God to be, Jesus Christ to be, and challenge even some of the old beliefs and narratives, suddenly the sky's bluer, right? The
Yep.
grass is greener. Gratitude is more prevalent and present in my life. And I also want to add that life didn't all of a sudden become easy either,
Perfect.
right? We
I
understand the opposition in all things.
Yeah, for sure. This is a good
Um,
conversation to have.
and so it's like as I turn back to go, like, okay, first of all, God, I'm sorry because I thought I knew you,
Yep.
and I came with this preconceived notion, and I shaped my relationship with you because of it.
Yep.
And I'm like, how does that not cleanly transition to how we as mortals could maybe mend fences with each other and go, you know what, I thought I knew X about you,
Yep.
or I perceived you to be this. And
Yeah.
whether you are or not, commonality is you're a brother or a sister in Christ.
Yep.
You are the sheep that he will leave the rest of the flock for and pursue you endlessly because he cares enough about each of us. When I think about what life is like now, I'm humbled to know that all at once, simultaneously, he will pursue me just like he's pursuing you.
Mm.
And he won't force me to come to him, but I just picture open arms and saying, hey, like, hey, we got this.
Yeah.
And taking a collaborative approach with my creator, with God, instead of, well, I'm going to do it until I can't do it anymore. And then I'll come and say, hey, God, you know what? Like, hey, I need you. I can look at times where my prayers have been really strong when things were going sideways in my life.
Yeah.
And conversely, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm still going to come to you during that time, but let me meet the day with God. Let me tell you what I'm grateful for. You know, I've got a body that's still allowing me to be on the earth, and I've got kids that are healthy, and I've got a job, and I don't have to walk to work. I
Yeah.
can drive, and
Yeah.
and just it's
Yep.
amazing to me. Like my communication with God has changed when I start listening to things that are grateful and
Yep.
gratitude
Oh
based
yeah, for sure.
instead of woe is me, life is hard, because yeah, that's going to come.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's been a very powerful and humbling experience because when I decided to tune into the frequency, if you will, of God's broadcast,
Yep.
it's like being out in the field, right? Like you can get a radio transmission that you hear bits and pieces and you're like, oh, okay, I think I understand the message.
Yeah.
But if I really tap into the signal and I have my crypto in,
Yeah.
I know exactly what the mission is. And I know exactly what my guidance is. And I know what help I have.
Yep.
But it's up to me to use the equipment. And
Yep.
so I just think like when
Yeah.
I got out of my own way,
Yep.
that's when things started to change.
That's a great analogy. I appreciate what you just said because you could get those tidbits, right? And I think a lot of us do get those tidbits and it's not the full story. And then we might get close to the destination, but we don't really get to the destination. And we waste a lot of time and energy doing that. You've mentioned this the same idea twice or three times already in this interview, and I think it's interesting. You're describing this concept of free will in a way that that I think it's confusing for people, in that God allows us to choose, and He's asking us to choose Him, but we get all kinds of other choices, and He's okay with that. And when I grew up, I thought free will was, well, it wasn't that I could choose Him. I thought I had already chosen Him, but I could choose all these other things. And it's reversed. His heart is breaking every time I'm choosing something other than Him. Yet that when I go back and say to Him, I chose you, and He's like, good, because I chose you too. And things are a whole lot better. And so I find it fascinating that you continue to, you're using different words for how I interpret free will, and that is your choice in your own behavior and the things that you're doing. The other thing that you have said a couple different times, and I just want to clarify it because I'm fascinated. The old Jesus and the old God versus the new Jesus and the new God. What are the differences? Like, compare and contrast for me the old versus the new. What does that look like?
So the old, like I said, I can imagine the scary God sitting on high, moving his pieces,
Yep.
moving the hand and a storm comes, and like it's this very like, and I still don't know where I came up with the
It's
idea.
okay.
And yet when I look at like how I view God now, it's this almost like, okay, I make a misstep where I have a knucklehead moment in my life, and it's almost like when I picture my kids when they were learning how to walk.
Yep.
Anybody who has kids who's listening, like we were so supportive and encouraging when our kids went from rolling over to pushing up to I'm gonna crawl to now I'm cruising furniture, and it was like the I'm gonna reach out and let go for a second, but I'm gonna grab the couch again.
Yep.
And anytime they stumbled or fell, I can't think of a parent in the listening audience who was like, "Stupid baby,
You're right.
why'd you do that?"
Yep.
We're just so encouraging, and so now I
Yeah.
picture God,
Yeah.
and He's like, "It's okay, Jake.
Yep.
Like you're going to fall.
Yep.
And let me help you pick you back up. And let me get you back onto that couch so you feel a little balanced and steady.
Yep.
But he's got my hand and he's there. And it's like he loves me enough to not dictate that, Jake, you are going to do X, Y, and Z, and you're never going to have any struggles, and you're going to perfectly return to me. Because when I reflect on that mindset, if I'm being honest, I would feel cheated,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like my lumps, my struggles are in my path as opportunities for me to go, you know what? I can do X as far as it'll take me.
Yeah.
But when I collaborate and I work with God and I'm willing to align and humble myself, it's that father figure. I mean,
Yep.
he really is that father figure
Yep.
with an infinite amount of love and an infinite amount of opportunities to go, you know what? Yeah, you've made this mistake 10 times.
Yep.
You're probably going to make it another 4,000 times, and I still love you.
Yeah.
And I'm still willing
Yeah.
to be.
I was gonna say not just still love you, but I died on the cross for that time too. Over and over and over again, right? Still knowing what we were going to screw up, he still died for us. Like what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's phenomenal and amazing. So,
And when I
yeah, go.
say that, I go, I can ask myself, even this,
Yeah,
and no, these, even this.
yeah, even that, all of it, all of it. So, it, we're all work in progress, right? I think I heard you say it earlier that, you're still growing, which is good. I mean, we all need to be growing. If you were to look a little bit into the future, what are some of the hopes and prayers that you have in this journey that you're on?
Mm. Going forward, looking into the future, is my ability to take feedback, collaborate with the people around me, you know, fellow members, fellow people who believe in God, people who are spiritual, people who maybe they don't believe in God outright as we perceive him, but they know that there's something more than themselves.
Sure.
Like, I feel like embracing the commonality that I share with other people helps me to be a witness and to testify of God and Christ,
Yeah,
because I have a couple of options. I can meet people where they are, like God does for us,
for sure.
be encouraging and be like, you know what? We're different. And I like that. And I want to learn about you. And I want to understand your backstory, which is why you are in the present and
Yep.
where you want to be in the future.
Yep.
God is always, today, yesterday, and in the future, right? We know that. And so it's like those small opportunities to implement that in my own life, in spite of my mortality and my struggles.
Yeah.
I used to beat myself up as an example of, we know God states he won't be mocked, right?
Hmm.
But I'm making the same mistakes over and over and over.
Yeah.
Like, so am I mocking God? And it's like I'm trying to use a mortal understanding of a godly perspective.
Yeah. Hard work.
Yeah. And so
Really
I'm like,
hard
you know
work.
what? Let me meet you where you are, like God meets me,
Yeah.
and let me grow every day.
Yeah.
And in the future, I look and go, have I been willing to challenge my beliefs? You know, and when I make that statement is I believe God encourages us to ask questions. That's why we pray, right?
Yep.
God, help me to understand. Help me to be humble. Help me to see what I don't see in front of me. What are my blind spots?
Yeah.
And if I'm willing to listen and be receptive, I can start to knock off rough edges.
Yep.
But at the same time, if I'm creating my own echo chamber, well, Jake knows.
Yeah.
So Jake's just going to continue to do this. And so it's this dance, if you will, that in the future I've been willing to be humble, hat in hand, to say, I thought I had this all figured out. I thought
Yeah.
I was in the right direction, and I'm willing for you to shape me and push me.
Yeah.
That's where I hope to be.
That's amazing. And imagine my perspective. And I have right now on the books 41 interviews of people sharing their faith. And imagine the amount of growth and learning I get to do because I get to listen to every one of the stories face to face, generally speaking, and see where other people are and this is not about me. This is this is about you and your story and God and your story, and I'm fascinated by it. If so, you have this unique. Also, let me sort of back up a little bit. We all have roles in life, right? You as a man have a role as it appears to be dad, husband, brother, nephew, grandson, father, grandfather, right? We have all these different roles, and a lot of those roles are associated with where we are at home, at our church, at the grocery store. You have a business that you're also running, and I'm just curious what kinds of things have changed, or how do you operate your business differently based on how you perceive God and His involvement in the rest of your life. What does that look
Mm.
like?
To go back to meeting people where they are.
Yeah,
Um, what we do in our nonprofit, we founded Warrior Wellness Initiative to specifically help combat veterans. There's a lot of outreach for veteran groups,
yeah,
but I feel like after 2 decades of war, there's a lot of training that goes into teaching us to be effective warriors, to win
yeah,
the fight, to
yeah,
be a very powerful world military,
yeah,
global impact.
yep,
But there's a gap in my observation of how do we help guys come home from the back half
yep,
and process.
yep,
And a lot of it is God,
yeah.
right?
It has to
And I
be.
recognize that some people don't want to talk about God. Okay.
Yeah,
Whether you align with God, a higher power, the universe,
yeah,
I know that all things are created by Him. So if
yep,
we have to use different language, I'm still going to reference it, but that's okay. I'll meet you
yeah,
where you are. But we created this nonprofit because we have this gap of how do we help people heal? And I
yeah,
look at my own story, and there were a lot of wickets along the way, a lot of
yep,
forks in the road, a lot of waypoints.
yep,
But when I look back, God was on every one of those. And so, whether it's the veteran who's self medicating and they're deep
yeah,
into alcoholism, or they're chasing adrenaline, or they have broken families because they're home but they're not home,
yep,
we offer a process for them to reunite with themselves to reclaim their lives because our trauma can anchor us and it can be a very moving and powerful source if we use it, right?
sure.
But it can also anchor us and we cannot move from that place.
Yeah, of course.
And so we offer, we encourage, we even challenge this narrative that the commonality here is trauma's trauma. And I don't care where you got it.
Yeah,
You went to war and you didn't come home different, you were probably broken before you left. And that's okay.
for sure.
But this notion and narrative that men, you talked about, as a father, as a husband,
Yeah,
um, I believe, and I've witnessed it in the military community and the veteran community, that there's this stigma attached that if I say something's wrong or I'm struggling,
yeah,
well, you're weak.
yeah,
And what's your problem?
yeah. You're
Yeah.
where you're a warrior. What's wrong with you?
Yes.
Like, well, wait, hold on, just a second. Do we not realize what just happened here? There's wow. Yeah.
And so we offer a challenge to that stigma and go, you know
Good.
what? If you're willing and you're ready, we're here to support you through it. And I share, I say, hey, I'm a little further down the path than you are maybe at this time.
Sure.
And I can only share my experience, but I know
Yep.
without a doubt, I wouldn't be where I am right now without the impact of God in my life. And so my root, my foundation is here's an opportunity for hope. There's an opportunity for healing. There's an opportunity to reclaim and step back into the life that's waiting for you. And all of those things are there because of your creator.
Yeah. Yeah, and an outpouring of forgiveness for all of the things that you feel like you've screwed up along the way. Because I can't even imagine that how heavy that burden has to be as well. Decisions that were made in the field, decisions that were made as you left, things that you feel like you've neglected, things that you fell short in. Maybe somebody got hurt because of something that happened. There's got to be an amazing amount of guilt associated to with that set of experiences, and to have a heavenly Father saying, "Just come to me. I will forgive you and allow them to release that burden. That's got to be an amazing thing to watch.
Yes, and to your point, one of the things that I've observed, and this is just me speaking about my experience,
Yeah,
I learned recently that I was entitled to my trauma. And what I mean by that is, I won't talk to you as an example because you weren't in the same area
yep,
of operation. You weren't in the same day.
sure,
You weren't there. You didn't chew the same dirt. So how could
yep,
you understand?
yep,
And I see that within the veteran community. I'm like, okay, it's a fair statement.
sure,
And I would counter, there is someone who absolutely understands.
yeah,
We're there.
yep. They're with you.
Yep.
Yeah, and not only know what you did, but what you were thinking about, and how you behaved, and they're still there. He's still there, going, come here. It's gonna be okay. Yeah, it's a really powerful thing. That's amazing. If there were somebody who was hurting like that has had this sort of trauma in their life, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? How do they get some of the healing you're talking about?
So they could go to our website. It's Warrior Wellness Initiative, all one word, all lowercase.com. That'll take you to our website. It gives you an intake form that allows you to say, okay, this is who I am. This is what's going on in my life. You upload a DD 214 because that's how we verify that you are a combat veteran. Anybody
Yep.
who's in the military or a veteran knows what a DD
Yep.
214 is.
Yeah.
And then we have a call. And it's going to ask questions. Are you currently self medicating? If so, what are you using?
Yep.
Are you under the care of a physician? If so, how are you being treated?
Yep.
So we get really down into the weeds because we want to make sure we understand the relationship. And then from there, we do some feeler calls, and then we bring you out to our retreats. They're 3-day retreats twice a year, very small and intimate. Anybody in the military knows big group settings, you tend to get lost in the sauce. You can
Yeah.
hide.
Yep.
If you're coming to work with us, it's because you're willing to do the work.
Yeah.
And so we're not going to let you hide,
Yeah.
and we're going to support you through it. And then on the back half of our retreats, we offer 90 days of online community. Meet every Saturday, and we continue to build off of those three concepts of hope, healing, and reclaiming.
That's
And all we
amazing.
want to do is pay it forward. There's no cost to the veteran. So whether you're a veteran yourself, again, go to our website.
Yeah.
If you have a veteran in your family, it's your husband, your brother, your son, just send them our way. And what I can promise is they can have a money back guarantee on the sorrow and pain that they're experiencing, or they can try a different approach.
Yeah. That's amazing. I appreciate what it is you're doing. I appreciate the commitment that you made to uphold freedom for us and putting your life on the line for people like me who you didn't know at the time. And I also appreciate you sharing your story today because I think that there are a ton of people out there who can really relate to what it is you've been through. And you're an encouragement, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate meeting with you.